Hey everybody, welcome back to Cruising with the Carsons, my channel. If you've been following the saga, you know that I've been covering a lot about my personal frame flex issues and what's been going on. To get you up to speed, they're coming Wednesday to pick up this camper and bring it back to the factory because it got dropped by the technician. You can see that in other videos. I've got a special treat for you today, and that is because I've seen videos out there of interviews with Lippert's frame technicians, but in my opinion that's a bit biased. So I wanted to solicit an outside source, an engineer, and I want to ask some non-softball questions and get some real-world opinions and data from a real live engineer who's been in the industry almost his entire life. So no further ado, I want to introduce Mr. Fred Coob. Fred, thank you so much for being here today. If you'd indulge us, Fred, and just tell us a little bit about your background and a little history, and I'll give it over to you.
Okay, I've been a manufacturing engineer most of my life. I started in the ag imp side of the business at Deere & Company back in 1965, and I worked there about 20 years. My expertise is in heavy cast machining, cast iron, and forgings, and most other materials, including plastics. And worked there 20 years, like I say. Then I went to GM, and I went to the auto side of the business, and I worked there for about 15 years. And then I went to GM Powertrain after I retired from Delphi, and I worked there as a SQE, that's a supplier quality engineer, for 8 to 10 years, and then I just quit working and finally retired for good.
Lucky you.
Yes.
We're all working our way there, Fred.
Right.
So suffice to say, it sounds to me like you're a pretty qualified guy when it comes to engineering and how frames are built and how things work.
I worked at a frame company for it was less than a year, but it was several months in Flint, Michigan, building frames for the like the P truck, if you're familiar with that body. It's a
heavy duty,
like a potato chip truck. It's
a
medium duty truck, and it's we built the frames for that. It's we built like a 20-footer and a 28-foot frame for truck and bus.
Okay. So I just want to clarify, Fred, that you've never worked for Lippert Incorporated. Is that correct?
I've never worked for Lippert. I've heard of them. I've had a camper just like we're standing in front of, and I've had the Lippert systems and the jack system and
sure,
and so forth. Yeah.
Okay. And I just want to reiterate, I haven't pre-scripted you. I haven't showed you my questions that I was prepared to ask you, so this could all be pretty much straightforward.
I have no idea what you're holding in your hand. I hope there's pictures on it.
Well, drum roll, please. All right. Well, I'm going to dive right in if that's cool with you, Fred.
Do it to it. Yes.
One of my first questions that a lot of viewers ask too is, if the framing and the nose cap is compromised, and there's visible damage like you've seen on mine last Saturday when you stopped by.
Yeah, the doors are caught, and there was a difference in the height of the frame here.
Right.
Pin box, I mean.
So in your opinion, is the main frame of the camper compromised in any way from the added stress of this failing?
It certainly could be. It certainly could be. Depends on where the axles are and the jack points here where you got it setting now, but it certainly could be, and in my opinion it would be loose somewhere in the middle if it's compromised, whether they use bolts or I see welds on the outside. I don't know what's on the inside. I've not looked inside one of these.
Okay. Okay, got it. So quite possible.
Yes.
Next question is, if there is damage to the main frame of a large RV, can it actually be repaired while the walls and ceiling are still attached to it?
You're talking about a large RV. This is what, 40 feet?
This is 41 and a half.
41 and a half feet, yeah. Well, I'm thinking right off my top of my head that you would have to, at least to look at it, you'd have to do a body off inspection or take it apart in some way, shape, or form. At least pull the front cap to see what's up here.
Sure.
And then you'd have to pull the body off, you know, like you would an automobile.
Yeah.
To do it like you do a frame off restoration, and I'm familiar with those.
Yes, yes, and that's quite interesting to myself as well as some of the viewers out there, because that was one of my arguments with Lippert was, or excuse me, with, sorry, we got a bunch of background noise going on here. That was one of my arguments with the manufacturer when they promised that this frame would be good as new and there'd be no problems, and they would bring in a Lippert specialist to certify it. Myself being a construction contractor, business owner who builds big buildings back home, and Fred here, we both understand the mechanics of how things work. So in my world, I don't understand how they can guarantee that that frame is going to be just fine after this structure lets loose without removing the entire body. So great answer, because I like that one a lot.
Just what I'm looking at.
Right, right. So Fred, if there is frame damage to, let's say, the front area, again, then wouldn't due diligence say to look all the way down the entire frame?
I'll tell you what, that's what I would do. That's just my first thoughts and my opinion is that's what should be done. If you find damage on any part of that frame, if something has come loose or been left out of the frame assembly, a gusset or a brace, a frame part anywhere, I would be looking at the whole thing.
Right.
And front to tail.
Okay, awesome, awesome. That's kind of what we've all been wondering, and why Grand Design hasn't really been coming out stating what they're going to do exactly.
I don't know.
Right. So a lot of speculation and wonder involved in the equation of just doing a superficial fix.
Yeah, it'd be real hard. I know you did some measurements. You told me about that a couple days ago, about checking. We pretty much surmise there's something loose up here,
Yeah.
but it needs to be checked all the way to the tail,
Okay.
in my opinion.
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically what you're saying is for front to tail, it should be fully examined and scrutinized.
That's what I would do.
Right, okay. In Fred's opinion, who is a professional in the industry. So Fred, are there any key areas of interest that a person with frame flex should be looking at regarding the main frame? Meaning, you know what I'm saying, is there any certain portion after this fails that other people should be concerned about or looking into?
Other than damage to the body, if your frame is flexing and if there is something wrong in the sub-assembly above the pin box here, if you certainly have body damage, it's not really damage. I see a ripple in the body outer surface over here.
Yep.
And where there's a joint, and I see the doors don't fit right around the front area here on the sides and the front. But I would also go back to the locating points where this thing is locates and levels. The camper we had was just about the same size, a couple feet shorter, and the jacks are in the same place as ours were, and they were a Lippert automatic level system, just like this. They work good. I didn't experience any problems, but I would think, in my opinion, again, you would have some problems where you got a jack point, especially the front back to the middle. Just looking at the structure of this thing and how these frames are built.
Right, right. And if I'm hearing you right, that almost sounds like goes back to one of our prior questions where you really need to examine the entire frame
Well,
if something up here has been compromised.
I was also looking the other day at your tag over here, the information tag, and you got 14,000 plus pounds on one axle and 16, if I remember right, plus something on the other. So you got a lot of weight on this. And if you're stressing this thing just over these speed bumps right here in this road, that would, over the length of this thing, that would put a lot of stress on this. If you're fixed here to a pole vehicle, and then you got your wheels back there, that's a lot of the side stress and front and rear stress. The way they pin these things and the way they hook them up to a pole vehicle, such as this right here.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. One more question too is, in all of your experience, whether it be in automotive engineering or frame engineering, etc., would something of this magnitude be grounds for a factory recall?
Well, I've seen a lot of recalls in my day, and of course they continue on and on. And the recalls I see now are for lighter stuff. You know, Chevy's currently got 800 and some thousand for tailgates, and to me, that I don't know what the tailgate could hurt. I'm sure it's not going to cause an accident, but I'm thinking this is a little more critical than a tailgate, and they've recalled some Dodge Rams. They got 2 or 3 recalls on those for a few 100,000 pickups, but I can't remember what those are right off the top of my head, but
Sure.
Just in the past week or two, and I don't see a lot wrong with those. They recall them and they fix them. I had a pickup that had a recall on it, and it was for the passenger side airbag. Well, the Takata airbag recall several years ago was a big deal in that, you know, that did injure people and hurt them when they went off, unexpected,
Yeah.
not in an accident. But I think the severity of the problem, which you see here in this, would be a means for a recall. I think that'd be a safety
Come in
safety
closer.
thing.
Come in closer. Did you hear what this man just said? What we've all been feeling and thinking in our critical thinking minds? That Fred just said, who's in the know about current recalls, etc., that GM, which I happen to own, has over 800,000 recalls issued for a tailgate, correct? But here we have a 16,000 pound behemoth with failing pin boxes, etc., up above, which has the potential for a massive safety failure that could potentially kill people. If this failed and this fell onto the truck, that's a catastrophic accident.
That you're right. You're right. Yeah, that's
This
not
guy.
it's not a Takata airbag back in the late 90s and early 2000s, and it's not a tailgate. It's it's not a light bulb that don't work,
Sure.
or a signal light or something like that. No, this would be more catastrophic, like Greg said.
Okay. Another question for you, Fred, would be, in your opinion, if General Motors, who you used to work for, had an outside source manufacture its frames, and there was an ongoing known defect with that frame that GM was using, who would bear the responsibility of making it right to the buyer?
Well, the end manufacturer would be GM, but it would be the supplier's responsibility to fix that for the supplier, which for the manufacturer of the vehicle, which would be GM.
Okay. So let's say in a particular case such as mine, and this wasn't on the questions, but it pops into mind. Let's say Grand Design has their engineers develop a frame for a particular camper, saying that here's what we need you to build that will carry the weight according to our calculations. And Lippert Incorporated manufactures that frame for them, and they send it back over to Grand Design, but all of a sudden there's catastrophic failures starting to pop up with all the frame flex issues. In your opinion anyway, would Lippert bear some of that blame, or should they, or do you think that would fall mainly on the manufacturer?
You know, I'm not sure in this case where the blame would it of course be the Lippert, the frame manufacturer, but I'm not sure who would be the ultimate responsibility. I would guess, I would think, in my opinion, it would be the finish manufacturer. The
Right.
What is this?
For Grand Design.
Grand Design.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hence the reason when this first started showing up on larger scales up to 1 to 2 years ago,
That's who you should contact.
there was a lot of finger pointing. Grand Design was saying, Lippert, you're to blame. Lippert was saying, you gave us the plans, we built it for you. So hence the reason a lot of finger pointing has been going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in your case, on this pickup right here, GM made both the tailgate and the pickup they put it on. In the case of the airbags, that was Takata, and that's a supplier to the auto manufacturers. So that the main responsibility should, in those cases, would be the auto manufacturer.
Okay.
This case would, I think, should be the same, but it's I don't know. It's
It's a tough one. It's a tough one.
It is.
I can understand both sides.
You know, and it shouldn't be up to the ultimate customer to have to figure that out. They should get together and see whose problem is it and fix it.
Bingo. Hence the reason there are so many frustrated customers out there, not just Grand Design. This problem's been shown. I just had a guy email me today who watched my videos, who has a 2023 Alliance, and it's at the factory right now with frame flex. So it goes across the board, and I think that's because a lot of these frames are from Lippert are going to other manufacturers for the big rigs.
Yeah. Well, that stands to reason that if you have a supplier, a frame supplier in this case, such as Lippert, and they build frames for various coach manufacturers, then that's their problem. But the ultimate coach manufacturer should take the responsibility to fix the customer.
Right. I agree fully.
Of course.
Right? No, I'm not biased at all. I've got 2 more questions for you, Fred.
Sure. Fire away.
Second to the last would be, my particular camper came with 2 7,000-pound axles. Now, some people in the industry want a little more heavy-duty underneath, so they're going to 8,000-pound axles and independent suspension and all these other kinds of things. When Grand Design told me, you just give us a laundry list of things that you want and need fixed, I asked them, I want you to beef me up to 8,000-pound axles with independent suspension. Their comeback was, if we do that, it's going to throw off our engineering specs, because 8,000-pound axles are going to be more rigid. It won't absorb as much and won't flex as much. What's your opinion on that?
My first thought on that was, what kind of axles do you have? Are they Dexters?
I believe these are Dexters.
Dexter
I
axles,
believe they are.
And bearings and so forth, and suspension. I'm really not going to get into that, because I think the frame manufacturer ought to take that in consideration as an option, and check the ramifications of what can happen if you upgrade or beef up, like you say,
Yeah.
to an 8,000 pound axle. So, I'm really not a design engineer.
Right.
People that are, but I am not a design engineer.
Sure.
I'm just been a manufacturing engineer all my life, seems like, and it's when you put a spec out that says build me a vehicle, whether it be an automobile, a pickup, or a coach like this, to handle an 8,000 pound axle, or two of them, or three of them in some cases. The coach manufacturer has an option of putting another axle under there. I've seen coaches. I don't see one around here. We're in a trailer park, by the way, and I don't see any with three axles. But I know the gentleman down here that is a mutual friend of ours had one just like this. Not the same kind, but it was a different kind. But it had three axles under it because of the weight.
Sure.
So that's how you would handle that. You could put heavier duty axles under it, or increase the number of axles. That's how you engineer a vehicle like this.
Sure. Okay, and that. So any viewers out there, if you've swapped out to 8K axles with independent suspension, etc., I'd like to know a little backstory. If you heard from anybody who put those in, say that this is going to change the dynamics of your entire frame specs and suspension. I'm going to say probably not, because I know there's a lot of aftermarket companies out there. One big one in particular, I can't think of it. I think it's a husband-wife team that will actually come to your site and install them in one day. They do the disc brakes, and they do the 8K axles and independent suspension, which to me theoretically seems like it would be a lot better than just two rigid mount 7,000 pound axles. But again, keep in mind, Grand Design told me they didn't want to put that on my particular camper because it would throw the specs off. So I found that rather interesting. So thank you for that answer. The last question I got for you, Fred, is, I know you're doing good. Let me wipe this. So I found this out when I turned in my claim. I had to fill out a bunch of paperwork on a questionnaire, and when they got my photos and the questionnaire, they emailed me back and said, we can't help you. You have an air ride pin box on your camper, and you have airbags in your truck. Your warranty is void. Can't help you. I called them back. I go, you better look at my photos again. It's the original pin box, the serial numbers. I can prove it through my last 2 years of camping at different sites, time dated on pictures. So they called me back and said, oh, you're right. Yeah, we didn't see that. And I asked the gal on the phone directly from Grand Design, why, if I had an air ride pin box with airbags, would that void my warranty? Her exact words were, it causes an adverse effect where they work and chuck against each other when this has air and that has air. Would you have any insight to that or knowledge to explain why that effect would happen?
I don't. I really don't, and I really don't want to get into that.
Sure.
I had a 3/4 ton. Yours a 1 ton.
Yep.
With the air ride, and mine was a 3/4 ton without. Mine came out of the factory at. I'm talking about my camper I had. My camper came out of the factory at 10,500 or 600.
Okay.
So it was light compared to this thing. Compared to the ones I see today, I've not seen one that light.
Yeah.
But we ordered it so that it would be light, so I could pull it with the pickup I had.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to buy a new pickup because I bought a new camper.
Yeah.
I had a pickup and I bought a camper to match it. So that's why I bought one that came out of the factory. I was looking for something under 12,000 pounds,
right.
And it just happened to come out of the factory at 10,500 pounds, and I was elated. I thought, boy, this thing ought to pull nice, and it did. Nice. I had absolutely no problems, of course. And it was a 2015. It was built in 14, but it was after the shutdown period, so it was classified as a 15.
Sure.
Now, I see this one, according to the tag over here, was built in August of 21.
21.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, you know, and of course, and yours is longer and has a front living, if I am looking at this right.
Yes.
And so, you know, it just depends on how you
What you do with it, how you
dress,
treat it.
how you build them, and how
Yeah.
you stuff in them.
Okay.
If you know what I mean.
Got it.
You know?
Got it.
Yeah, you can have 2 bathrooms and.
With your gracious
Whatever.
permission, you did so good under pressure. I just thought of one bonus question.
Oh, no.
We got time for one more?
Sure.
I
No
want-
no commercials
No,
here.
no commercials. No, we're not sponsored by anybody. With not paid
No, no.
advertising. I should have clarified that. We're just a
No.
mom and pop YouTube channel trying to bring some truth out here. We're just part-time RVers.
Yeah.
So a big topic right now has been Lippert Incorporated themselves and the quality of welding that comes out of a factory like that. They turn out a massive amount of frames, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any insight or experience regarding the welding process used today? Is it automated? Are there live people doing it? What happens when a lot of the welds are poopy that come out of the factory?
Welding. That's an interesting subject.
A whole different cat, isn't it?
I've been involved in welding, as you see here, the arc welding and the stick welding. I've done spot welding. I've done sonic welding, and I've done the where you just spot it. I've done 4 different kinds of welding over my career, and all I know about welding basically is when you go into a shop and they show pictures of an automotive shop and cars going down the line, or frames or bodies,
Yeah.
and you see these pictures of the welders coming in and sparks flying everywhere.
Yeah, like the robotic arm.
I don't care what kind of welding you do, you just see no sparks. So
Interesting.
that's a good sign. If you can get a tour to one of these companies, just walk in, and if you see sparks, there's something wrong with the welding system.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I figured that out and discovered that early on.
Yeah.
And there are ways to fix that. There are the electrodes, which is usually the problem with the electrodes, and the power supplies need to be adjusted, of course. And I've worked my career. I've worked with mostly Miyachi power supplies on most of these welders, but they can be adjusted, and once they're adjusted, they'll do their job. It's the electrodes that you have to watch, no matter what kind of welding you do.
Okay. I know on mine, when this problem first started, and I learned from you and other people along the way that it's a good idea to inspect my frame by myself, so it's not a biased opinion.
Oh yeah, I always did.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I got underneath each run all the way around my unit here. It took me about an hour and a half to do it, but I inspected all the visible welds. Mm-hmm. And on my outriggers, on some of my gussets, on some of the important crucial spots. Again, I'm no welder, but I know how to see good work or shoddy work.
Yeah.
And there are chunks of wires hanging out from the welds from their wire feeds. Mm-hmm. I found areas where you'd have a semi good looking bead and then a eighth or inch or so of no penetration, and then the bead starts again.
Yeah.
Can those compromise a system?
You know what? I can't help but think they do. But when I was an inspector, way back in my first or second year of working at Deere, what I did is welding was always a destructive test. So
okay.
You had, then what that means is you cut the piece apart, or you try and knock it apart, or do whatever you can do to get to inside where those parts are welded, to look and see what the penetration is.
Sure.
And then check the welder.
Okay.
Or the weld system, or the person welding. Yeah.
Okay. In closing, I promise this is my third bonus question. So, what we talked about earlier, that the only real way in your professional opinion, to know if the frame was compromised in any way because of this failure? Number one would be you'd have to remove the entire shell and body. And number 2 or 3 or whatever it would take, you have to inspect that frame thoroughly and actually take one of these units and dissect it and scrutinize it to see if there's compromised areas.
You said inspect the unit thoroughly, and that's a good idea. That means 100%.
100%.
100%.
There you have it. 100%. Fred, thanks for coming today, man. I appreciate it.
Nice meeting you.
Everybody, thanks for tuning in, and hopefully those answered some questions that people have had, I've had, about who should be responsible, what to look for, what to expect on a frame, how it might represent the camper if this is compromised. So look forward to more information coming out as it comes. Thanks, everybody.